Hi, I'm Whitney Espich, the CEO of the MIT Alumni Association, and I hope you enjoy this digital production created for alumni and friends like you.
Good evening, good afternoon, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's Professional Development After Hours 2021 Hacks to Help Land Your Next Job. This program is being brought to you by the MIT Alumni Association, and I think that we all agree that this is a very timely topic. My name is Armina Karapetian, and I will serve as the host for this event. I'm an MIT alum. I'm a Sloaney MBA class of 2005, and I'd like to give a special shout out to my fellow MIT Graduate Alumni in the audience. I'm a current member of the MIT Graduate Alumni Council, and our mission is to find meaningful ways for graduate alumni to connect back with MIT. I'm joining you this afternoon from Reno, Nevada, where I also serve as a volunteer MIT Alumni Reginal Ambassador for the greater Reno, Tahoe area. We're extremely pleased to have you here with us tonight. As we start, please feel free to drop in the chat where you're joining us from or your MIT course and class year, so we can get a better feel about who's joining us tonight. I think we're all Zoom experts right now, whether we want it or not. That's a different story. And it's nice to be able to connect as a community of undergraduate and graduate alumni peers, no matter where we are located. We have a very interactive and exciting program for you today. If you joined our presenter for part one of this webinar, you know to be prepared for live participation and real-time demonstrations that will help you implement what you learned here today. Please do your questions to the Q&A or to the chat. You can find those icons at the bottom of your Zoom window. This presentation will be just under an hour, and then we'll have some time for questions from the audience. With that, I'm pleased to welcome back again Jeremy Schifeling, and who'll introduce himself. Jeremy, I'm going to hand over the controls to you now.
Thank you so much, Armina, for hosting tonight. Thank you also to the amazing team at the Alumni Association, Lizzie and Ellen and Emily, and everyone who made tonight's session possible. I loved having a chance to connect with you back in the winter, and I'm super excited to be back here in the spring after my second coronavirus vaccine this morning for a really great session today. So that being said, let me share my screen with you. And what we're going to cover today is basically everything you need to be super successful on LinkedIn here in 2021. So just to dive in, let's sort of pick up with a little bit of an intro, a little bit of background. But like Armina said, let's make this super interactive. If you've got questions, if you've got anything that you want to share, please include that in the chat at any point. Happy to take those as we go along. Okay, so a little bit about myself. You know, I've led this incredibly lucky career getting to work at all these cool organizations you see here in the upper left. However, the one place that really changed not just the trajectory of my career, but actually my life was getting a chance to work at LinkedIn. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, LinkedIn, that's kind of boring, isn't it? It's not as sexy as a Google or an Apple or whatever. But the reality is that as a job search novice who had spent all these years wandering in the desert trying to understand how the hiring process worked, getting a chance to work at LinkedIn was kind of like being in the global hiring nerve center where all the world's recruiters and all the world's companies were picking talent for their organizations. And so the secrets that I learned there, I've been able to share with alumni at great organizations around the globe, and most importantly, leverage it to help them find awesome opportunities across lots of different verticals, everything from tech and nonprofit to government and consulting. And so what I want to focus on today are those same three core principles that I shared with you last time. And that's really number one, we as job seekers can often look at the larger labor market, especially here in 2021 with everything being so topsy-turvy, and just feel totally overwhelmed. Everything is up or it's down. What chance do we as an individual job seeker have to navigate this great sea of opportunity? But the reality is that if you zoom from the macro down to the micro, you realize that any individual hire, whether it's at Google or Apple or LinkedIn or anywhere, is still going to be a step-by-step process. And of course, for everyone who's trained at MIT, you know that when you have that linear process, you can break it down and reverse engineer it. And so what I'm going to recommend is that if you want to get the greatest leverage out of that reverse engineering, that hacking, if you will, the place to really do it is LinkedIn. Because unlike a certain job board or a career site that has just a slice of all the opportunities, LinkedIn is that central hub where all the action is. Again, every organization in the world, every recruiter, every job, pretty much every white collar professional, all on the single platform. So that gives you tremendous power right at your fingertips. The problem is, as I talked about last time, LinkedIn, led by people like myself, have led you astray. We've told you, go to LinkedIn, read a lot of content, post stuff in the feed, get a lot of endorsements. But at the end of the day, if you take that kind of approach, you may not have much to show for it because it doesn't really focus on ROI, return on investment. You've got limited time, you've got limited energy. How can you focus it on the things that matter most? And so the first two things that we covered in our last session were, first of all, focusing your search the same way that a recruiter does, knowing exactly where your North Star is and how to pursue it. And then thinking like a recruiter who's looking for target candidates and getting the right keywords on the right places on your LinkedIn profile. But today we're going to go all the rest of the way in the hiring process. We're going to consider how recruiters spend an enormous amount of time, not just searching for candidates, but choosing the most worthy candidates based on signals of engagement that we'll talk about momentarily. And then they want to seal the deal by getting a referral, having someone on the inside vouch for you as a candidate that takes you from a stranger who's risky to an insider who's a sure bet, all the way down to the interview stage where they want to make sure that you are who you claim to be on your LinkedIn profile and you're ready to rock the job. Now, that being said, if that's how recruiters are using LinkedIn, here's how you're going to hack it step by step, following the exact same approach. So again, we've talked about getting focused in your search, making your LinkedIn profile really stand out. But again, if recruiters want more than just a good profile, they want clear signs of engagement, we're going to help you figure out how to do that. And if a referral is a gold standard for a recruiter, the easiest way to set their anxious mind at ease, we're going to help you find a referral. And then finally, for that interview test of knowledge, test of competence, we're going to help you cram for any interview ASAP so that you can walk into a Zoom interview and be ready to knock it out of the park. Now, as you probably recall from last time, I'm a huge fan of keeping this lively and back and forth. So we are always going to start with lots of pop quizzes. Here's the first one. I want you to consider this and then put your answer, A, B, or C, right into the Zoom chat. So we've talked about how LinkedIn recruiters often seem to be in the catbird seat. They're looking at all this talent. They have access to all this great opportunity. And yet the single number 30 can actually haunt the dreams and nightmares of recruiters around the globe. Why is that? Is it because A, a LinkedIn recruiter has to have 30 connections at a rival firm to start poaching talent away? Or is it B, LinkedIn puts them on a clock from 30 days to hook a new candidate start to finish? Or is it C, that LinkedIn recruiters are limited to about 30 emails a month if they want to actually be able to reach out to candidates and give them opportunities to interview? And Lizzie, if you're there, I would ask you to make me a co-host so I can see some of the feedback coming in. Right now, I can't see any of the chat. So again, put in your answers, let me know, and we'll make sure that we get you the right answer here. Okay. Okay, and so I have a huge shout out to Henry, to Jessica, to Emily. The answer is actually C. And this is kind of shocking because if you joined our last session, you may recall that LinkedIn has this incredible monopoly over data when it comes to talent out there, which is that LinkedIn can say, hey, because we are the only source of all the world's professionals all in one place and the data around them, we're going to charge recruiters $10,000 per year per seat to access our special LinkedIn recruiter platform, where we come in and see all of that world's talent all in one place. But even for $10,000 per year per seat, recruiters still get a measly 30 emails a month, 30 messages to reach out to new candidates. And so that means if it's May 6th and you are already seeing on your screen 0 emails left for the month, it's kind of like the game over screen in a video game, because that recruiter who is raring to go, raring to find great talent, is now rendered onto the sidelines. And so LinkedIn says, you know what, recruiters, we're going to throw you 2 bones. We feel a little sorry for you here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make it easier for you to do the right thing. And the right thing in our mind is not sending spam to all these candidates who are not interested, who would never work for your company in a million years. And so if you send messages to those candidates and they never respond back, yep, you've lost that email credit for the rest of the month. However, if you do the right thing, which is that you reach out to awesome MIT alumni who are just sitting there waiting for awesome opportunities, and they do respond back to your email on LinkedIn, we will then refund that credit. And so a savvy recruiter goes from about 30 emails a month to 330 or 3,030 just by reaching out to the most engaged, serious candidates who are likely to respond. That's the first bone. The second bone that LinkedIn throws to recruiters is how do you find those really engaged candidates? So what you're looking at right here is the LinkedIn Recruiter platform. That is, again, about $10,000 per year per seat. And you can see how a recruiter might come in and say, I need a project manager in the Chicago area with these particular skills. But even with all those filters applied, there are still almost 43,000 candidates who match the criteria. Way too many for the 30 emails that recruiters been allotted. So then LinkedIn says, we're going to give you these 3 additional filters to make sure that you can find people who are actually engaged, who really want to receive your email. And to demonstrate these, I would love to have a brave volunteer come over to the Zoom chat and put in these 2 magic words, I'm in. And I'm going to show you an extremely high ROI focused approach that's going to take you about 5 minutes on LinkedIn, but it's going to massively increase your access to opportunity. Basically flipping a switch that gets you from being completely off the recruiter's radar to being squarely in the center of it. And again, just come over to the Zoom chat and say, I'm in, and you can be our initial volunteer. And I have to give an amazing shout out to Jessica Quay, who was super fast. Jessica, I got to tell you, if you ever have a chance to be on Jeopardy, you're going to rock it. That being said, if Lizzie or others, if we could turn on Jessica Quay's microphone, that would be amazing. And then Jessica, just let me know when you're on.
Hello.
Hi, Jessica. How are you? Let me try that one more time. Jessica, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hi. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for being a brave volunteer. And before we dive in, I just have to take a moment and ask all the MIT alumni out there across the globe, please go to the Zoom chat and send some digital love Jessica's way, because that takes guts to be that first volunteer. You probably remember sitting back in the classroom, being in the back row, never wanting to raise your hand necessarily. And Jessica just did that for the entire Alumni Association. So huge props to you, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you,
Jessica,
everyone.
Just to give your fellow alumni a sense of where you're coming from, tell us when you graduated from MIT, what you studied, and then what you're excited about professionally.
Okay, I studied electrical engineering and computer science. So I was a 6-2 major. I graduated last year. I'm interested in the intersection between tech and public policy. So really understanding how we can leverage technology for social impact.
Very cool. I love that. And so what's your experience with LinkedIn so far, Jessica? Have you ever had recruiters reach out to you, say, hey, I'd love to chat with you about this role?
Yes, so I've actually had 2 of my internship opportunities come through LinkedIn. The first one was an engineer at a company that reached out to me and then put me in touch with a recruiter. And then the second one was I reached out to a couple of people working on a team who were doing work that I thought was very cool. So yeah, those have been my experiences with LinkedIn. Other than that, I also just sometimes post what I've been up to, share some of my blog posts on there. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I have to say, first of all, congrats on your recent graduation, but also congrats on being a really savvy LinkedIn user. Like the fact that you have recruiters reaching out to you already at this stage in your career means you're absolutely doing something right with your profile, which is awesome. And that really is the dream
Thank you.
scenario, right? Like, we've probably all spent so much time as candidates applying into these online application black holes, never hearing back. And then all of a sudden to have recruiters reaching out of the blue and saying, hey, I want to interview you, Jessica. Like that's just a job seeker's dream. So thanks for sketching out a portrait of what's possible.
Thank you.
Great. So let's get into the 3 filters here that you see on the screen, Jessica. So imagine, that you've got a recruiter. It could be at a Google, or it could be at a startup, or it could be a nonprofit. And they need someone with an engineering background, but also an interest in public policy, maybe sort of tech for good or tech for social impact. And so they're going to choose these filters across the top to find the most engaged candidates who are worthy of that in-mail. So let's talk about the first thing, which is called open to opportunities or open to work. So question for you, Jessica. If you come over to your own LinkedIn profile right now, and you come all the way down here to this thing called open to work at the very top of your page, have you ever seen this or have you turned this on?
Yes, when I was looking for an internship, I had it on, but then now I no longer have it on.
Cool, cool. And I think that maybe that actually may have led to some of the opportunities you mentioned, because if we come back to our recruiter scenario, again, imagine seeing the sea of 43,000 candidates. I don't want to wait in there and just hope for the best. I want to go to the candidates who are actually in the game, who are excited to receive an email from me. And so if someone tells me that they're actually open to work, that's an amazing signal. And you can come in here and say, director of public policy or tech for public policy or anything like that. You can choose different locations, including remote work. So obviously that's on everyone's minds these days. You can let them know a sense of your timeline and even the kind of work you want, everything from full-time to contract work. Now, let me ask you a quick question, if you don't mind, which is, Jessica, are you currently employed, or are you worried about maybe an employer seeing you do stuff on LinkedIn and you have to keep it kind of below the radar?
I am not currently employed, so I'm currently wrapping up a grad program and heading on to another program. So I would be doing school for a while. That's the only reason why I don't have it on anymore.
Absolutely. And I tend to recommend that, like, unless you are absolutely in love with your current job and you would never move in a million years, you can always just put it on and say, hey, I'm flexible. Because I think a lot of us, deep in our hearts, if someone came to us from our dream company and said, I want to interview you, we'd probably consider that. And so I would recommend turning that on.
Right.
And then here are the 2 scenarios. I think for you, Jessica, maybe not right now, but maybe closer to when you're ready to start applying for jobs, when you finish your grad program, you could definitely use this really open and transparent approach of just saying, hey, here I am, I'm looking for public policy, I'm looking for tech. And that way you get the power of your entire network working for you. So friends and family and former colleagues see that you're interested in a specific role and they can reach out. And LinkedIn has actually seen that there's about a 4 times boost in the number of opportunities you get when you turn on this open frame. However, if you had told me, Jessica, like probably many in the crowd today, that you're currently employed and you're worried about your boss finding out about your search, you can absolutely still send a signal to recruiters, but just on the down low, which is only show this to people who are recruiters using this very expensive product. And then specifically, if those recruiters list my current company as their current company, filter them out. Don't let them see my signal. And that way you don't have to worry about the HR department ratting you out to your current boss. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Cool, cool. So I would say certainly turn it on in the meantime, and then maybe even turn it on to the next level when you're ready to do that. And I just want to give a quick reminder to all your classmates out there, which is, if you've got questions about this tool or anything else I'm showing today, feel free to share those in the chat at any point. Okay, so that's that first filter, and that's just an obvious one. If I'm a recruiter, I'd rather reach out to someone who's serious than someone who's not. Okay, number 2 is this idea of company connections. And so you can always sort of put yourself in the recruiter's shoes and imagine, all right, I've got one last in-mail left for this month, but I have 2 stellar candidates. Who am I going to spend it on? I've got one candidate who doesn't know anybody at my company, and yet I've got another candidate who knows 5 people. In that scenario, who would you reach out to, Jessica?
To the person with 5 connections at my company.
And why is that?
And my rationale for doing that is that there's a likelihood that one of the connections at the company actually knows them, and I can ask about them or get some more information about the candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have that sort of social proof piece, which is you can leverage your in-house network that knows this person to test out Jessica. In addition, they may
Right.
just be more likely to respond to your email because they already have a little connective tissue to your organization versus this total stranger over here. And sure enough, in LinkedIn's own testing, recruiters do prefer that more connected candidate in almost every instance. So your instincts are spot on. And so let me ask you this question. How many connections do you have on LinkedIn right now, approximately, Jessica?
About 1,000.
About 1,000, which is amazing. But let me ask you this question. How many people have you ever known or corresponded with in the course of your entire life?
Many people, more than 1,000.
More than 1,000, right? And the trick with LinkedIn is that you only get credit for the people that LinkedIn knows you're connected with, not the people that you actually know in the real world. And so your goal is, how do I merge those two networks together? So LinkedIn gives me credit for everyone I actually know. So if my really diverse and broad network, I happen to know someone at my dream company, I actually get filtered in by this filter. LinkedIn knows that I'm a connection of that company insider. And so again, I'm kind of a lazy guy. I don't want to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I want to spend just enough to be effective. So rather than doing networking the way that we traditionally do, which is, one at a time over years and years, I say, let's accelerate things. Let's catch up really fast. And the way you can do that is you come over here to this contact import section over here. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to have LinkedIn pull in your address books. So your Gmail address book, maybe even your embarrassing Yahoo or AOL address book if you're old like I am, even your phone's address book using the LinkedIn app. And what LinkedIn will do is it'll take those emails of people you've corresponded with, because that's basically what an address book is. It automatically adds people in as you correspond. And then it'll form a match, which you can then automatically choose to reach out to. So to come over here to continue, you will see that we still have the option of accepting those connection requests or not. And you can do 20 people, 100 people, as many people as you want. But rather than do it one by one, you can actually boost your network really, really quickly. And of course, just by having a large and diverse network, you're more likely to be filtered in by the switch at the top. Does that make sense, Jessica?
Yes, that makes sense.
But let me play devil's advocate a little bit here. Do you have any concerns or reservations, given that all the advice you've probably been told your entire life about social media is keep it private, Jessica, keep it locked down?
Pardon me?
Do you have any sort of like red flags that pop up when you hear about, whoa, I've always been told that social media is dangerous, don't have a large network?
No, I don't. I was actually going to wait for you to finish and then ask this question about connecting with strangers. So I'm comfortable with connecting with people, like importing contacts and then connecting with them. But then sometimes, like when you receive tons and tons of connection requests from people that you actually haven't met in person, I'm wondering what your thoughts are on connecting with people,
Yeah, great question.
that you don't know.
Yeah, and I'll just explain sort of like, 'cause I do get a lot of pushback sometimes where people say, well, I've been told keep my Facebook private, keep my Instagram private. And it certainly makes sense, because if you think about it, when you consider sort of the upside versus downside equation, there's not that much upside for being really public on Facebook, but there's a massive downside, right? People could steal your identity, they could find out this information about you. So it really is good advice to keep it locked down. LinkedIn, the ratio is flipped. The upside of having a large, diverse network is that you just have access to more opportunities, just statistically. More people who can refer you in, more recruiters who are going to find you, versus the downside is maybe you let a salesperson sneak into your network and now they try to sell you something, and then you can just remove them from the connection. So just thinking purely from an ROI perspective, is a pretty good ratio to consider. As far as strangers go, however, I'm not a huge fan of just reaching out to total strangers where you have nothing in common or no sort of prior correspondence, just because maybe they'll mark you on LinkedIn as like, why did this person reach out to me? However, the big exception is if you have a really good reason to reach out to them. For example, you're a fellow MIT alum, you're interested in the same field, you could have a really awesome dialogue, you could help each other out, then it's totally fine to connect. Just provide that connective tissue in your connection request. Explain the context. Make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you.
Cool. And then last question for you here, Jessica. There's this last piece of engaging with your talent brand, which is basically the idea of all things being equal, I as a recruiter would rather reach out to people who are following my company than people who care less. So which companies are you most excited about in terms of post-graduation? Where would you love to work, Jessica?
I have varied interests, but at the moment I'm looking at Microsoft Research.
Yeah.
Specifically the Tech for Emerging Markets group.
I love that. So for example, let's say you want to work for Microsoft Research Cambridge. How perfect, right? If I'm a recruiter there, I can actually see on the back end whether or not you're engaging with my talent brand, whether or not you're a follower. And given that you can follow a company with just one click, there's really no reason not to sort of opt into that. A, because you're going to be filtered in on this search. And then B, because you'll be learning about the company in your feed as they post stuff about, here's our latest papers, here's our latest research. And that way, when your interview day arrives, you're really ready to go. So just a good reason to follow those companies.
That's a brilliant.
So again,
thank you.
As that proverbial lazy job seeker, I would spend about a minute on this open to new opportunities thing, maybe 5 minutes importing my connections, and then maybe 30 seconds following companies. But all of that can drastically increase your odds because it pulls you out of this pool of random strangers who never get emails to this elite pool who are absolutely at the top of the list. So I hope that you try that out, Jessica, and please let me know how it goes, okay?
Will do. Thank you so much. This was helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for being an awesome volunteer. And now I want to address a couple of questions that came up while Jessica and I were chatting. And please do feel free to keep chatting those in. Steve asked, on that open to work section, do you not recommend putting immediately? And I guess my feeling is it's good to be straightforward and honest with recruiters. If you currently are loving your job, and yes, you would consider moving for the dream job, but probably not for a little while, I think it's totally fine to say, I'm flexible, but I'm not in a hurry to move. That way you're not leading anyone astray. That being said, if you are looking to make a move quickly, absolutely list immediately because recruiters can't see that. Great question, Steve. Henry says, do these settings matter at all beyond recruiters who are reaching out? So for example, what if it's the flip side of this equation where I as a job seeker am actually applying and hoping to hear back? And there's still a big benefit because the same place that recruiters see you as a potential candidate, which is this LinkedIn recruiter tool, they can also see you as an applicant. And when they see you as an applicant, all of the same social data is there. They can see if you have company connections, they can see if you're a company follower, they can filter on those things. And so if I just received 1,000 applications online, the immediate filters I would make as a recruiter are get rid of everyone who's not following me. They're not serious. Get rid of people who are not connected to my company because they're going to be maybe harder to sell in the long run. And so there's definitely a benefit whether or not you're sitting back or being proactive. That's an awesome question, Henry. Sun asks, do you think LinkedIn will change its approach to emails, like expanding the number of monthly emails, getting rid of monthly email limits, buying emails bulk, et cetera? It's an interesting question, Sun, but I was just doing a little bit of research on this, and LinkedIn is actually moving in the opposite direction. I think there's been so much spam with emails where recruiters have just reached out to an engineer at Google a bazillion times, and they've marked LinkedIn as spam in Gmail, and they've complained that the company is now wary of kind of killing the golden goose a little bit, which is this amazing talent that has voluntarily put up its information on LinkedIn for free. And so LinkedIn not only limits recruiters to a paltry number of emails, they actually measure the ratio of responses. And believe it or not, even for $10,000 per year per seat, if your ratio of responses falls below 20%, so you send out 6 emails and 5 are not responded to, LinkedIn will actually block your account from sending emails for the rest of the month. And again, you would think these well-paying customers would be the most important priority, but I think LinkedIn is wary of it going too far, and so emails are being even more restricted. And that's even more reason as a job seeker to make sure that you're demonstrating that you are indeed email worthy and you will help those recruiter ratios. Sandra asks, do you accept contacts that you know are trying to sell you services or products? Well, it's always a good question, Sandra, and you have to sort of come back to what are your own goals? What's your North Star? If you have someone who reaches out and they're clearly a salesperson, it says business development manager or sales associate or whatever, account executive, yes, they will likely try to sell you. However, think about this. Imagine that person reaches out from Google. And now when you want to apply for a job at Google, guess what? You now have a connection on the inside. So maybe you indulge a little bit of their sales emails back and forth, but at the end of the day, maybe you build a relationship that becomes the person who refers you in, maybe even the person who hires you someday. So there can be an upside even to salespeople, but obviously only if you have that goal in mind. Good question. Okay, Kristen says, how soon before your earliest target start dates does it make sense to say looking for work at least immediately? I would say that if you are looking to get a new job, period, so you're like, hey, I have to leave my current company. And I might have a timeline that's a little bit slower because maybe I have a vacation planned or I've got personal stuff that I have to attend to. I would still list immediately because that means you're ready to interview right away, even if you're not ready to start right away. I was referring more to kind of that feeling of, I like my job, it's pretty darn good, but I might move for the perfect opportunity. Kind of like that feature in Zillow that says, make me move for a certain price. Maybe that's when I would turn on that filter. Okay, let's do one more question and then we'll move on to the next section. These are awesome questions, by the way. Barbara says, is there a place to indicate visa sponsorship needs for the US in LinkedIn? If so, would you recommend using this? Yeah, this is one of the most challenging things is that if you are an international job seeker who's looking for a job in the US, you have to go through this crazy gauntlet of the visa application process and then get hired based on that. And so I do think that I'm gonna be very honest with you. I would not lead with that at the top of my LinkedIn profile or even in my summary or about section. Because again, put yourself in the recruiter's shoes. I've got 2 candidates to go after. One just seems like I can go ahead and win them tomorrow. The other person, maybe I need to get visa sponsorship and jump through all these hoops and hire all these lawyers. You can imagine human nature being what it is, us all being slightly lazy. Maybe we just pick the path of least resistance. So I think it would be fair at some point, maybe at the bottom of your profile to include it, but I wouldn't call it out at the very top, just because I feel like it might get you kicked out of processes too early, when in fact, if the employer falls in love with you and the recruiter recommends you and the hiring manager wants you, then they'll do almost anything to get you on board versus it's harder to sort of have that connection earlier on in the relationship. Okay, let's move on to our next section and our next pop quiz, which is, actually, before we get there, I wanted to give you a little bonus hack. So kind of what I was just asking Jessica is, hey, who's your list of great companies to work for? And you might be thinking to yourself, well, I'm not really sure, who's out there, who's hiring right now? One really cool thing that LinkedIn has done in the last couple of years is they've basically created, and actually Jessica might be interested in this, they've created this public policy unit inside LinkedIn called the Economic Graph Team. And what the Economic Graph Team does is it actually analyzes this rich data set that is LinkedIn to figure out all the trends across the macroeconomic global scenario and the microeconomic local scenarios. So for example, if you come over to this link, which analyzes the labor market, I'm going to put this right here in the chat for everyone to check out. You can say, you know what? I'm curious who's hiring right now in the greater Boston area in the last 3 months ending in March, and maybe specifically in the education space. And then voila, LinkedIn crunches the numbers and gives you a sense, whoa, Northeastern's growing pretty fast. And the Broad Institute at MIT is also doing pretty good. This might be the time for you to sort of strike while the iron is hot because their hiring is on fire. You can also do the same kind of analysis at the functional level, even at the skill level, which is pretty awesome. So if you just need to build a sense of what's out there, this is a great tool to use. Okay, let's move on to our next pop quiz as promised. So at the end of the day, it's great to have a great LinkedIn profile, and it's great to have all the right filters working for you with engagement. But nothing is going to satisfy you, and nor should it, short of getting an interview. So based on the data from millions of job applications, which of these approaches is the best predictor, the most highly correlated with whether or not you actually get an interview? Is it A, reaching that famous all-star level of LinkedIn profile? B, having the right keywords on your resume? Or C, getting a referral from an employee? And again, if you can, come right into the Zoom chat and plug in A, B, or C. So Lizzie and Ellen are guinea pigs here, say B and C. So a little division within the alumni team. Sandra says B, Francisco says C, Tom says C, Armina says C. Thank you, Armina. So a lot of C's. And I suspect you all have seen data just like this before, because employer referrals are indeed like gold. Now, what you're looking at is this very powerful little bar graph. Dare I say it, the most important graph in the entire wide field of job searching. And the reason is that it really cuts to the chase on what matters. So this is based on millions of applications as captured by the applicant tracking system JobVite. So if you've ever applied for a job online, JobVite or a system like it has probably captured your resume and put it into a database for the recruiter. And so what JobVite has on this right-hand column are all of the applicants across North America broken down by source. And sure enough, just like you might expect, the vast majority of applicants are coming from the usual suspects. Career sites, so Indeed.com, Monster.com, even LinkedIn.com, and then also job boards, Google.com or Facebook.com for those specific companies. Meanwhile, this tiny little minority of people are getting an employee referral, less than 10%. And yet, when you flip over to the most important side of this graph, which is who's actually getting hired at the end of the day, everything reverses. The people who applied through the usual suspects aren't getting anywhere, statistically speaking, whereas those employee referrals are getting an outsized impact. The vast plurality of all jobs are being gobbled up by this tiny minority of applicants. And the reason for that is just basic human nature. The same exact phenomenon that was identified before by Jessica, which is people like people they know, people like people they trust. And so why am I going to trust a stranger's resume over the expert counsel of someone that I actually work with every single day? Of course you're not. And so if you've got a colleague or a friend at the company who tells you that Jessica is awesome or Ellen is awesome, you're going to take their word for it and you're going to give them an interview. And that's the power of an employee referral. But the question, of course, is how do you actually get that referral? How do you go from being an outsider and a stranger to an insider and a sure thing? So to give you a sense of how to do this, I would love another brave volunteer to put in these magic words in the Zoom chat, I'm in, and I will walk you through everything you need to know to break into any company in the world. It could be the smallest, most selective organization, the Fort Knox of opportunity, if you will, and I will get you there step by step. And Sandra, I've got to give you huge props for being so quick on the trigger as well. Sandra, we're going to go ahead and get you unmuted here, and I will walk you through this whole process. And Sandra, it sounds like you're on. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay, how are you?
Fine, thanks.
And Sandra, tell us a little bit. Oh yeah, Francisco says, so brave. Armina says, thank you, Sandra. So you're already getting the love, even without me prompting. That's why I love MIT. Sandra, tell us a little bit about your own MIT background, and then also a hypothetical company you might want to get a job at someday.
Okay, so I did my master's at Sloan in class of 2006. I have been doing part-time job at a non-for-profit. My kids are actually ready to graduate and go actually to MIT. So
wow,
I'm ready to,
congratulations.
Yes. So I'm ready to go back to, a for-profit situation, both in my career and, with the industry. So I'm looking for a new job.
Very cool. And so if you had to make like a dream list of all your future employers, who would be at the very top of that list?
I was looking for a consulting company.
Yep.
Maybe Boston Consulting.
Yeah, very cool. And that's such a great one because I feel like we all know that consulting is driven by relationships. So I'm sure referrals matter just as much or more at BCG as any other organization in the world. So let's help you crack in there. So first thing I want to show you with LinkedIn is that LinkedIn not only has the ability to show you all these great alumni from MIT, like we talked about in our last session, but it can also give you a massive employee directory for any organization in the world. So type in BCG or Google or Nike, and then just click their number of employees to get an instant company directory that I promise you is richer than the one BCG maintains on its corporate servers. So no need to hack in there, Sandra. LinkedIn gives it to you all for free. And all these 25,000 BCG employees could be potential referrers for you. If you were thinking, again, based on sheer laziness, sheer ease of use, who is the lowest hanging fruit for you, Sandra? Somebody you could go to tomorrow to get a referral at BCG.
First
degree connection, basically someone you know already, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we say first degree, show results. And sure enough, 31 connections where I say, Nikolai, Sarah, Ashley, you and I used to work together. You and I used to went to school together. Would you mind putting my name down for this job? Because that's going to give me a huge edge in this very competitive process. And not only is that a good thing for me, it's a great thing for them because so many companies, including BCG, have a referral bonus, which means that if Nikolai refers me and I get hired, Nikolai not only gets a pat on the back, but also $1,000 or $5,000 for bringing in great talent. So it's a real win-win. Definitely don't overthink that. But now, it's going to get a little harder here, Sandra. If you don't know anyone directly, where might you go next to find a referral?
I guess I would go to the MIT Alumni group to see if there are any alums working there.
Absolutely. So you say all filters, and you slide on down to the school section. And check this out. This is kind of a little weird quirk of LinkedIn, but MIT is right there, as is MIT Sloan. And they're actually counted as separate institutions for whatever reason. And so you actually want to take credit for both because you can. So why not? And so now you have both alma maters working for you. And you say show results. And no surprise, there are 500 plus MIT or Sloan alumni working there. And so if just to sort of walk us through this process, let's say you wanted to reach out to Vladimir, who's in the Cambridge area. If you were going to send him a message, what would you say in that message? How would you even begin to reach out to him?
I think that that's the hardest part, but I was writing what you just said, and you said, would you mind to put my name for this position? Because it would give me a great, I don't know, it would, no, I don't know.
Yeah, right. And this is exactly why we're doing this, because everyone says get a referral, but no one tells you how to get a referral, especially down at this level of detail. So let's walk through it together. If we're going to game it out, yes, you could reach out and say, hey, Vladimir, I'm an MIT grad just like you, give me a referral. But the one dangerous part of a referral is if he legitimately doesn't know you, he's kind of putting his reputation on the line for an unknown entity, which could come back to haunt him. So he might be a little bit wary. If we want to warm him up first by getting to know him before making the ask, what can we put in this message that might lead to a conversation?
Okay, so I would say, hi, Vladimir, I'm looking for a change in my career, and I would be very interested to see if you have 5 minutes of your time to share with me your experiences and what you have been doing. I would like to learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that good? Is it good to ask for minutes of their time when you have an ultimate different objective?
Yeah. So no, you've nailed a lot of the most important things. Let me just call them out really explicitly so everyone can make sure they nail them too. So the first thing is you can't assume he's going to look at your profile before he sees your message. So you want to make it easy for him to understand what's the connective tissue here. So I would say, as a fellow MIT alum, I was thrilled to come across your profile, especially given that I'm considering applying to a role at BCG. And now it's just a lot more obvious, right? This is what we have in common. This is how you could help me. It just sets the stage. So I think that's what I want to add in there. I do like the idea of being very clear about learning from his experience. Because if you come on with a sales pitch, Sandra, and you say, hey, I'm an amazing analyst and I'm great with Excel and I'm awesome with PowerPoint, he's gonna be like, whoa, I just met you and already you're pitching me on something. That's too soon. Instead, give him a chance to share his story. So I love that approach. And then you probably learned this in your marketing classes at Sloan. But what does every great marketing campaign always conclude with, Sandra?
Action.
Call to action, right? Because I get so many messages from students at my own alma mater who just say, Jeremy, I would love to connect with you. And that's fine, but it's kind of a dead end. You want to always provide an action step, and you want to make it really easy to say yes. So an hour feels like too much. A real world meeting might feel too much in this moment here in 2021, but 5 minutes, no problem. So I love that approach, Sandra. And now last thing, when you're on the phone with Vladimir, what are you going to talk about that could ultimately lead to a referral? How will you get there?
I guess, well, here's the question. Am I assuming that I would be working for someone like Vladimir, or am I assuming that I would be reaching out to somebody who has a similar position that I want to join or to achieve? Because I guess it's different. If I'm going to be reporting to someone like him, I would like to ask him what he would be looking for.
Yeah.
But if I'm reaching out to a person who would be doing a similar job, then I would be asking, how is your day? What do you do?
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing. I think you're absolutely right. A good marketer always knows their audience, and so they tailor their questions accordingly. I think that when you consider who you want to reach out to or what level, there's always a risk reward piece there. You know, yes, it can feel more intimidating to reach out to a managing director or partner, but think about this. If Vladimir loves you after chatting with you, is there any way you're not getting an interview at BCG?
Yeah, you're right. So go
Right.
up.
Versus if you reached out to someone who graduated from Sloan last year, it might feel less intimidating, but they just might have less influence. So definitely, you know, consider that trade-off as far as your own risk tolerance.
Okay.
That being said, yeah, go for it.
No, so if I'm talking to someone who is at a higher level than me, what do you talk, like, what do you ask?
Yeah. So I think that no matter who you're talking to, it's always about them, right? Tell me about your experience. What got you into this field? What brought you to BCG? What keeps you at BCG? What drives you crazy about BCG sometimes? Because you want them to be really honest with you, because you're still kind of vetting the company a little bit. And then after they've shared that story, if you truly are still impassioned about this opportunity, then I would start to pivot. I would say, Vladimir, like, I got to tell you, these last 15 minutes have been so eye-opening, because every single thing you mentioned in terms of how BCG picks its clients, the way that it engages with its frameworks, that's the exact way that I want to work as I start this next stage of my career. If I want to follow in your footsteps, what would be the best way to get my foot in the door at BCG? And if he's honest with you, and that data does not lie, he's going to say, I'll tell you the truth, Sandra, you got to get a referral. And at that point, you can say, hey, I know this is a big ask, but is there any chance you'd ever be willing to put my name in based on this conversation we just had? And yeah, there might be some alumni who are still a little hesitant, but once they get to know you, once you turn on that Sandra charm, I think then they're going to be like, okay, I would love to work with this person. And it's no big deal for me to spend 2 seconds putting a little ping in the applicant tracking system next to her name. So that's really as simple as it gets, Sandra, in terms of find the right person, reach out the right way, and then engage them with the right questions. But Sandra, question for you. Does that feel doable?
The last part feels intimidating.
Yeah. And so here's the way you can do it, by the way, just to be clear. I'm an introvert. Like after I'm done with the session today, I'm going to take a long nap just because I'll be so worn out. And I could certainly imagine feeling the same way after talking to Vladimir. But even for me, I say, how do I play to my strengths? If I'm going to feel really tongue-tied making that request on the phone in real time, I'll say, you know, Vladimir, this was a great chat. Do you mind if I follow up with you later to sort of share how I've applied your advice? And then over email, I could ask him, say, Vladimir, you know, I took about a day or two to really think about what you shared with me. Upon reflection, here's what I loved about what you shared. Is there any chance that you'd be willing to put in a referral so I could follow in your footsteps? And that way, if writing is a better vehicle, you can sort of bring the conversation to that context. Sound good? Okay, Sandra, we're on our way. I just want to call out a couple other things real quickly here, which are that even if you don't have MIT alumni, because you know Ellen pointed out, BCG has to be one of MIT's top employers of all time. So this was almost too easy for Sandra because there's going to be so many alumni there. But even if it was a smaller company or a company that didn't tend to hire so many MIT alumni, you're still going to have other ways in. So you could say, show me everyone that I know who knows someone on the inside, a secondary connection. And then if I want to get in touch with Adriana, I just have Eric, our mutual connection, introduce us, kind of like a blind date. And now you have that social proof working for you. Alternatively, you could say, show me everybody who used to work where I used to work over at Accenture, who's now at BCG. And I can say, apples to apples, tell me about what this company is like compared to our last company. And I use that as my affiliation. Or maybe all I do is that I volunteer with Habitat for Humanity. And that's my biggest passion outside of work. Well, what do you know? There are over 100 BCG employees who also volunteer with Habitat. And that can be the way that you get your foot in the door. So bottom line for you, Sandra, at what point do you give up in your search for a referral?
Oh, you don't.
That's right, never, never, because you're an MIT alum. When you see this data, it gets so burned into your retinas that you say, I will never be one of those folks who's just applying online hoping for the best, when I can be one of those folks at the very top who's getting that extra advantage. So I wish you tremendous success, Sandra. Thanks for being an awesome volunteer. Okay, a couple quick questions, then we'll move on to our final section. Angela says, if I have not responded to emails in the past, how does that impact what recruiters see? Oh, Angela, this is like a genius level question, because it is true that recruiters in the recruiter version can see your response rate. And they use that to determine, are you worthy of that fabled email? And so what I would highly recommend that you do is, before you're serious about really upgrading your LinkedIn game, so to speak, come over to the messaging tab, filter by emails. So in this case, filter emails, and go to all the emails you've received but have not responded to, and go ahead and respond now. Better late than never. And so that way your ratio inside LinkedIn starts to rise and you become more email worthy. Awesome question, Angela. And then last one, C, identified just by one letter, says, Vladimir's time is precious. What's in it for him so he's willing to spend his time helping us? How do we craft our message to include that? Absolutely, I love that. At the end of the day, we are a somewhat selfish species, and a little bit of our altruism is also mixed with selfishness when we decide how to allocate our scarce time. That being said, I think as alums, you've probably all had that experience of wanting to pay it forward a little bit, of seeing someone coming down the same path that you trod and wanting to sort of give them the same advice and support that you might have received in turn. And so I think if you can say, hey, like, I would love to learn from your experience. I'm not here just looking to get a job necessarily, but I want to figure out, what should I know before I get in here? What do you wish you had known before you had dived into consulting? That can feel like catnip to any recruiter on a deep, or any alum, on a deeply human level, where it may not be like, oh, I'm going to give you a contract or a new client, but I'm going to give you that feeling of generativity, of being able to sort of support the next generation the way that our human species always has. So I know it may seem a little bit hokey, but just know that there's a lot of research that suggests people do have that innate drive to help members of the same tribe. And that's a very powerful connection that you have as MIT alums. Okay, let's move into our last section. Before we get there, I want to mention one quick final hack, which is, if you are not content just to talk to recruiters, if you want to talk to your future boss, you can actually now find them on LinkedIn for the first time. And the reason for that is that hiring managers, your actual prospective boss, have started to put this little magic word, magic phrase into LinkedIn, probably because they're so sick of waiting for their recruiters to find great talent. And they say, hey, I'm the head of engineering for fintech at Airbnb. I want rock stars. I want great people on my team. And so if you are considering going for this team at Airbnb or applying for engineering jobs in the Bay Area period, it would be crazy not to reach out to someone like Dwalu and introduce yourself. Because again, just like if a partner at BCG really loves you, that's a golden path to an interview. If the head of the team that's hiring really loves you, that's a golden path to an offer. So definitely work with recruiters, work with the referral system, but also go around them sometimes to find the actual decision maker. Okay, I'm gonna put that right into the chat so you can all try that as well. All right, last pop quiz, here we go. What do you think, based on a survey of about 2,000 bosses, is the most common interview mistake reported by hiring managers? Is it A, not knowing about the company, B, having a weak handshake, or C, having negative body language, which is sinking more candidates than any other interview faux pas? So Jessica says A, Armina says A, Tom says A, Francisco says A, Lizzie says A, and indeed it is A. Right off the survey, yeah, maybe there's some weird stuff with body language, but not knowing about the company, not coming in with that basic knowledge in place, that's just unacceptable. but it's also understandable, right? You might be interviewing for 5 companies simultaneously. How do you get ready when that interview pops up on your schedule tomorrow and you've had very little time to prepare? Well, what I want to recommend is a property that LinkedIn used to own. It actually just sold off in the last year, but it's still available. And it's something called SlideShare. And SlideShare is total catnip to nerds like me because it's YouTube for PowerPoints. Imagine that, all the world's decks all in one place. So if you've got that big interview at Google tomorrow and you want to know about their strengths, their weaknesses, their opportunities, and their threats, or the SWOT analysis, as the folks over at Sloan call it, you go to Google SWOT, and voila, a ton of smart MIT students or business students or MBAs have already created all this analysis work for you that you can use to quickly get up to speed and walk into that interview conversation like a pro. So just a nice little cheat sheet to get you ready for those big interviews. And speaking of cheat sheets, I want to give you another bonus hack here, which is if you are getting ready for your interview and then you crush it and you do an awesome job, but you're not sure this is going to be the right job for you, the one that's going to make your life just totally awesome. How can you do a background check on your future employer the same way they might do a background check on you? And so what I want to call out here is this really awesome feature on LinkedIn where I think, as I alluded to before, you can search for people from past companies. So for example, let's say that you go for the Google interview, you get the Google offer, but you want to figure out, would this boss be an amazing boss? Or would they be from more of the Devil Wears Prada or the Office kind of end of the spectrum? And so the way that you do that is you say, let's do a people search. We're going to do a little bit of Boolean logic here. We're going to say title is product, as in a product manager. These are people who have product in their title. And then all filters. So instead of current company, I'm going to say, show me people who used to work in the product organization at Google, and then maybe also went to MIT. So I know they're going to be friendly. I know they're going to have my best interest in heart. And voila, here are people who used to be on the product team at Google, but went on to Facebook or Lyft or other organizations and can now tell it to me straight. What's it like on the inside? What was my boss really like? Would I love it? And so definitely try a background search like that anytime you have a prospective offer to make sure it's going to be worthy of your talents and your time. Okay, we're going into the home stretch here. So Armina, I'm going to turn it over to you in a second. If you have any final questions, feel free to ask them in the chat right now. And as a quick little reminder, we covered 3 things today. We said, hey, don't waste time on LinkedIn the same way that everyone is. Instead, use it ruthlessly. Use it the way that recruiters do, which is if recruiters care about engagement, showcase engagement on your profile. Make sure you're open to work. Make sure you have a diverse network. Make sure you follow the companies you're excited about. If referrals 10x your chances of getting hired, guess what? Get a referral. Whether it's first degree, second degree, MIT alumni, even fellow volunteers. Find something that connects you with insiders. And then finally, get ready for prime time by doing your homework. Go to a place like SlideShare, get as much sort of standing on the shoulders of giants as you can, and then walk into that interview ready to rock. And then a couple of goodies to get you on your way. If I don't answer your question today, my humblest apologies, but I would love to connect with any MIT alum who, again, mentions it in the connection request. All you have to do is connect with me on LinkedIn, of course, and I'm happy to chat about anything on your mind, LinkedIn or career related. In addition, I actually have a free profile grader on my website that will walk you through a lot of this in the context of your LinkedIn profile. So have you optimized your headline? Have you optimized your open to work section? And you can use that for free right here. And then finally, I would be totally remiss not to give a massive shout out to the incredible work that Ellen and her team have already put together in finding awesome MIT alumni who want to give that advice, who are already just raring at the bit to sort of share their expertise and help you out. So definitely make sure to check this out as you begin your networking. Okay, let's go to a question from David. David, if you want to come off mute, I would love to take your question live. Hi, David.
Hi there.
What's your question, David?
I'm sorry, I had a couple of questions. One was, where do we get the video of this presentation and the previous one? Because I can't take notes fast enough.
Oh yeah, my apologies. I'm kind of like the micro machines guy from old, trying to get through all this stuff. Ellen, do you want to speak to where those recordings will be located? Lizzie says,
those are on our MIT Alumni Association YouTube channel, and we'll send all of that information to you in the survey email after the program.
Excellent. My other question was, is there any value in putting our email addresses into our profile somewhere so that we can get a contact from somebody without using their 30 contacts a month?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up, David. Again, just like your classmate before, this is like advanced ninja level LinkedIn stuff. But once you realize sort of the plight of the LinkedIn recruiter, they seem all powerful, but they're working within these very tight parameters. You kind of want to help them too, help them help you. And so what I've done on my own profile is in my about section, which used to be called summary, I have put my email address right in there. So that way, if I'm that last person of the month who just missed the final email, the recruiter can still engage with me. And I've actually gotten a ton of outreach specifically on email from recruiters who saw that as a nice option. So if you want to copy my format for the about section, I will put a link to that right in the chat. Great question, David.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go over to Armina. Armina, any questions that you saw that I might have missed or anything on your mind just based on today's session?
First of all, I want to say thank you, Jeremy, for such an excellent presentation. You know, I had a LinkedIn profile for how many years? I never knew that all those options were out there. So now I feel like I learned a lot. I'm sure so did all of the participants in this presentation. And I know that you answered a lot of the questions during the presentation. I love that it was so interactive. So I'm going to look in while I'm looking at the questions that are still open. I had a question for you. So, you know, I feel like almost every day I hear about an acquaintance or a friend who just had a completely, I think we're all having this existential life crisis due to the pandemic. So they just decided to completely change their careers. Do you think that it's something that's going to stay with us, or this trend, or do you think it's going to pass? And how do recruiters look at people who make a complete career change?
Yeah, you know, it's so fascinating because when this whole crisis first started, I was assuming it was going to be like 2008 all over again, where even if you weren't in an industry that was directly affected by the pandemic, there would be this domino effect where all of a sudden people would be laid off from tech companies and every company just because of the way the economy was shrinking. But actually what's happened is that there's been a tremendous bounce back and an increase in the amount of opportunities, especially in the tech world. And it's led to this kind of interesting parallel phenomenon of both a lot of opportunity, but also a lot of introspection. And the New York Times had this great article the other day on the YOLO economy of all these people saying, hey, I just survived this generational disaster. Do I really want to be spending my entire life in Microsoft Excel or in this cube or whatever the challenge might be? And so I think this is probably a perfect time to explore, both because there's a lot of opportunity out there. And I think we're all frankly exploring, even if we won't necessarily admit it. So definitely I would say folks should go for it. And that being said, to the second question about how do you explain that on LinkedIn? Will that sort of give you a scarlet letter for the rest of your career? I think the beautiful thing about LinkedIn is it's your own narrative. You're not using a resume template, or you don't have to be in a certain format. You tell your story the way you want it. And so if you want to focus on just the things you've done recently, or just the things you did 5 years ago, you can bring those to the forefront in the way you describe yourself in your headline, your summary, even the order of your experience. And so just know that when you're ready to sort of make a new pitch about yourself in the world, LinkedIn gives you that power. Great questions, Armina.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. So we have a question from Cheryl Chen. Cheryl, if you want to come off mute and ask your question live.
Hello, hi.
Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, I just had a question about internal referrals, which you mentioned earlier. I just was curious how it works. So does that essentially mean that the person just goes onto the internal company, like intranet, put your name in, and HR immediately definitely follows up?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of you are probably familiar with this idea of the applicant tracking system, which is again that JobVite type tool that's capturing resumes and then grading them and scoring them against different keywords. Inside these proprietary databases that companies buy, it is really as simple as there's like a little sort of check mark next to your name that the recruiter can filter on to say, I've got 1,000 applicants, but I only want to see the 10 referred ones because that's such a powerful channel for us. So that's the first thing. And that's sort of the lowest hanging fruit. You know, even someone who doesn't know you well can spend 5 seconds putting your name in there. However, I will say that if you really want to stand out, don't just have your referrer put your name in there because it's a relatively subtle signal. Have them reach out to the actual hiring manager. Send them an email or have a conversation where they shout your praises to the rooftops. And that way, once that level of sort of engagement has been made, it's kind of hard to forget you as a candidate. And I think it's pretty surefire that you're going to get that interview. So if you know someone really well, ask them to go that extra step for you just to sort of seal the deal. Great question, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Our next question comes from Shannon Christmas. Shannon, if you want to come off mute and ask your question live, that would be great. I'm not sure if Shannon.
There she is. Hi, Shannon.
Oh, okay, great.
Hello. Yes, this is Shannon. Hi, thanks so much. My question is, has LinkedIn made any sort of modification to their algorithms where they rate your profile? Because I'm curious about whether the all-star profile rating has now become a thing that is rated differently than it was before.
Yeah, great question. So we definitely went in depth on this in our last session. So check out that link on YouTube that I believe Lizzie shared in the chat a few minutes ago. But as a quick sort of cheat sheet, you know, this idea of having an all-star level profile is really just for you, but it's not that useful on the recruiter side, because all the recruiter cares about is, do you, Shannon, line up with my specific job requirements? And so you might have an all-star level profile, but if it's totally irrelevant or disconnected from what I'm looking for, you're never going to appear. So really the things that you want to focus on are, what's the key job title? So let's say, for instance, Shannon, you want to be a project manager. In that case, you would absolutely want to have the phrase project manager in your headline, because that's the first thing LinkedIn's algorithm searches for. And if it doesn't find it in that critical section, then you're basically invisible on the radar screen. So always put yourself in the recruiter's shoes and say, hey, what are their most important keywords? What are the things they're looking for, rather than having a generically good profile that's not specifically applicable to any particular job.
Thank you ever so much.
You got it, Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon, for a great question. Our next question is from Leah.
Hi there.
Hi, Leah.
Hi, so I guess my question was for showing an increased response rate to recruiters, whether it's just a matter of writing back with text or if it's a matter of clicking, yes, I'm interested. Because I know sometimes there's like an automated, sometimes I'm not interested in the opportunity, but I'm interested in indicating interest in the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Let me show you a couple of pro things here in this messaging section. So let's see here. First of all, I just want to give you a sense. I think Jessica alluded to this at the very beginning of our presentation, but when I talk about like LinkedIn lets smart but lazy job seekers really rise to the top, like here are all these jobs that have poured into my inbox over the last couple of months, just with me sort of having a good profile that's organized. And so definitely get a taste of what's possible if you're lining up well with those recruiter searches. That's the first piece. Then, and to speak to your question directly, Leah, when it comes time to your response, LinkedIn actually doesn't care whether you respond affirmatively or negatively, so long as you respond at all. And he'll actually send you warning messages if you haven't responded to many emails in a row that are basically your ratio is sort of headed out of bounds as far as recruiters are concerned. So if you see something that you're genuinely not excited about and you have no interest in staying in touch, you can absolutely come over here and just say decline without a message, no problem. Your ratio is kept intact, but you don't have to have any ongoing conversation. That being said, here's a really important pro tip. Recruiters tend to be incredible nodes when it comes to professional networks, because they move around across companies, because they meet so many different candidates, they know all these hiring managers, they are connected to almost everyone in your industry. And so even if I turn someone down and say, hey, I'm not interested in the job, I almost still always connect with them. So that way in the future, if they're hiring for someone or they know someone is hiring, they're going to give me that extra degree of connectivity, kind of like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. So recruiters are great people to connect with, even if you don't want the job. Awesome question, Leah. Or I mean, I think, yeah.
Yes, sorry. Our next question comes from Srishti Gupta.
Can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi, Jeremy. Yeah, my question is, you mentioned previously that on LinkedIn, we can search for the keyword I'm hiring and directly look at people who are hiring for some positions. So I was wondering whether it's a good idea to reach out to those people directly because they might be receiving a lot of messages.
That's a great question. Again, I love the way you're empathizing with your audience, which is, if I was in their shoes, I'm probably opening myself up to a lot of communication. That being said, as a hiring manager myself at Khan Academy, I can promise you that I get lots of messages that aren't really necessarily fully fleshed out, don't really speak to the pain points of what we're looking for. And so if you reach out with a really specific message, so maybe you look at their job description, and let's just do this together for a second. Let's imagine you've got this job over here for a product marketing manager at Stripe. You know, they're at a $70 billion valuation these days. And it says, this is what we need. This is what you're going to do. I would write back to the hiring manager of this job and say, I understand that the first and foremost thing you need is someone who's really gifted cross-functionally. Again, right out of the job description. Well, during my time at LinkedIn, I worked with engineers, designers, data scientists, and artists to bring together a massive team to serve universities and alumni across the globe. And we ultimately grew our audience to 40 million people. If you can have that level of specificity where you're responding to their pain, kind of with a painkiller, a Tylenol, if you will, that's such an effective approach versus, hey, I'm a great person in general, just trust me. So definitely they're gonna get a lot of messages, but if your message can rise above by really empathizing with them, responding to their needs, then you're gonna definitely stand out in a crowded field. Great question.
Good question. I think we have time for maybe only a couple more questions. Our next question is from James Larson. James, if you would like to unmute yourself and then ask your question, that'd be great. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for your time. This is James. Appreciate the presentation. I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about LinkedIn Premium and the value of that tool.
Yeah, I definitely do, James, and I'm glad you asked about that. You know, as a Microsoft shareholder, and of course, Microsoft acquired LinkedIn for $26 billion a couple of years back, I would definitely have a financial incentive to say, yes, you know, buy LinkedIn Premium, enrich my pockets. However, as a career coach, I have to say no. And the reason is every single thing I just showed you today, everything I showed you in the last session is all for free on LinkedIn without paying them 1 cent. And even the things that LinkedIn Premium advertises, like, hey, you get 5 emails a month, you could still go to a site like hunter.io and look up someone's actual email address or look it up in the MIT Alumni Directory, again, without paying LinkedIn or Microsoft any money. So with the value prop already so strong, without any investment, I would say steer clear of LinkedIn Premium and save that money to donate to your alma mater come donation season.
Thank you.
Great advice here. Our next question comes from Denis Loginov. Dennis, would you mind asking your question?
Hi, thanks for a great presentation. I have a question about recruiting agencies. Typically, they kind of screen candidates, and before you even have a chance to talk to real people at the company, to kind of show them yourself, to convince them, to talk about compensation, when it comes to that, they kind of force this kind of questions ahead of time, and you get this feeling that you're kind of being, just paper. And so would you say that it's worth our time speaking to recruiters that work not at the companies, but at the recruiting companies?
Yeah, that's a great question, because if you're really successful on LinkedIn, yeah, you'll have a lot of recruiters reaching out directly from the company, but a lot of headhunters as well, because obviously there's money to be made from referring you. So what I would say is a headhunter can actually work for you incredibly well. If we come back to some of that data that we had looked at before, you will notice that the only channel that really rivals employee referrals in terms of sheer efficiency is getting an agency referral, having a headhunter basically do the exact same thing for you. Now, a headhunter, just to be very clear, is never working for you. They're working for their client, the employer. And so they may have an incentive to try to sort of get you to take less equity because they don't get incentivized on equity or other things. However, LinkedIn has a solution for that, which is you always want to arm yourself before you dive into these conversations with something like LinkedIn Salary. And obviously you could do this on Glassdoor or PayScale or other places. But if you're going to be a design engineer, know what your worth is, know what that company pays and what its competitors pay. And that way, when they sort of try to put you into this little box, say, hey, I'm not asking for too much. I just want fair market value based on the data that I've seen. And once you sort of share that magic phrase with a recruiter or a headhunter, all of a sudden the negotiation changes where they know they can't necessarily pull one over you because you've armed yourself with great data. So start there, and then you're going to be on a level playing field going forward. Great question.
Thank you. I'm afraid this is all the time that we have tonight. Again, Jeremy, thank you so much for this excellent presentation, for sharing the wealth of your knowledge, for all the insights and very actionable strategies. Again, I wanted to thank you on behalf of the MIT Alumni Association for sharing that with our MIT alums around the globe. To the alums, thank you for tuning in tonight. A final call out to my fellow graduate alums. As a reminder, tonight's webinar will be on the Alumni Association's YouTube channel under the Professional Development After Hours playlist in about a week from today. Again, thank you everyone, and have a great night, evening, whatever you have in front of you, and we'll see you next time.
Good luck, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. And for more information on how to connect with the MIT Alumni Association, please visit our website.